The origins of Surrealism, the whole thing comes out of the Dada movement and the protests against the war, the First World War.
Yeah, seeing that your everyday environment is turned literally upside down, that the kitchen, which should be inside, is suddenly standing bombed outside, bodies are destroyed, limbs are missing. So the everyday became very surreal through the war, and I think that formed Surrealism.
Coming to it 100 years later, it's interesting to see how the movement has been picked up and adapted and utilised by different generations in different contexts, in different countries.
Who is addressing the Second World War and its horrors? It very often ends up that we're talking about men rather than female artists. So they are the great masters who are covering historical events, whilst women cover the more subjective, personal aspects of life.
Yeah.
I really wanted to turn that a little bit and question that, particularly in Germanophone contexts. Surrealism is a really powerful tool for artists to address the traumatic in society.
The women involved in this exhibition have responded in really interesting ways to that, and is very much grounded in the concerns of women.
Yeah. Body Minx, La Belle et la Bête.
Not Beauty and the Beast, Beauty is the Beast. The image of her sticking that tongue out that's covered in grey fur is really uncomfortable and quite visceral. So the beast is trapped inside the woman.
So she's questioning femininity, what is allowed, what is not allowed, the representations of femininity as bestial, but also I think she's using this in terms of empowering her main character, perhaps. Here we've got an absolutely magnificent artwork. So it's Meret Oppenheim's Squirrel.
It's a half-pint beer glass with a squirrel's tail for a handle.
But if you look a little bit longer, then suddenly what you see is a severed squirrel's tail. You've got the connotations of masculinity with this beer glass which is overflowing.
So are we reading the squirrel's tail, the fur, as feminine in this instance?
We can. I wouldn't pin it down to just one
Precisely
reading.
that.
I don't think the influence of Meret Oppenheim on later generations of artists has been acknowledged as much as it should have been, because it is huge. So here we are in front of Eva Wipf's ex voto shrine, Madonna de la Guette.
The church is big news still in post-war Germanophone countries.
Yeah.
And has a lot of sway and a lot of power over women's lives. Her parents were missionaries, weren't they?
Yeah. She tried to be very religious, but she just couldn't. And it was this turmoil in her, actually. I think that is what's going on.
So this is 1964 in Switzerland.
Yeah.
She's finding bits and pieces from junk shops and antiques dealers, and she's assembling them into these kind of shrine-like artworks.
Yeah, I think she's questioning a lot in terms of what does it mean to obey, what does it mean to pray, what does it mean to adhere to something. It's all these
She's
questions.
clearly conflicted.
I love these pieces. They are by Birgit Jürgensen, and they belong to a series called Schuhwerk, which is shoe work, and she made these in the 1970s. So we've got the bread shoe.
It looks very much as though dough has been spread onto the shoe and then it's been through an oven.
At the tongue of the shoe is a piece of bacon. Then we have the flyweight shoe. And then this teeny tiny little shoe here.
We know it's made from wax.
It has a couple of hairs in it, and Jürgensen died of pancreatic cancer. Yeah, the only things which remain of her body.
Quite extraordinary to think that that's the artist's own hair in there.
And if we think about the Holocaust, is of course what was found in the different concentration camps are these heaps, these mountains of shoes. And Jürgensen alludes to that as well.
Well, this is Birgit Jürgensen's untitled Hund dog. He's clearly a kind of masculine symbol. He's a very aggressive-looking Doberman, but he's broken, and his entrails are spilling out.
Yeah, and they are filled with artificial fertilizer. She plays with notions of fertility.
And the idea that families are providing more children to grow the state and so on and so forth. And women were really rebelling against that idea, weren't they?
Yes, she's questioning masculinity as well, and the difficulties actually men go through in terms of having to conform to stereotypical or conventional masculinities, and actually that it's not just a problem of women to conform to stereotypes, but also of men to conform to their own stereotypes.
This piece is really stunning. It's by Ursula. There are a lot of doors opening in this object. There's a lot of potential horrors that could come out of it.
Yeah, but of course the myth of Pandora is all about
the unleashing of war and pestilence and famine and death.
So you've got these googly eyes here. And they are actually very much part of surrealist traditions. Dora Maar used them in her photography. Dorothea Tanning uses them in her painting. Yeah. We can see also here shaving blades.
There's a lot of very sharp objects embedded in things in this exhibition, which is interesting. If you're not careful, the artworks can attack you.
Bertelmann's ex voto from 1985.
It's a massive pair of breasts with a very, very sharp blade sticking out.
Yeah.
The fact that they're on a heart shape is really interesting as well, because there's no resemblance to the body that these might conceivably have been attached to.
Yeah.
So they're completely disjointed from the context of a human body.
It's definitely turning the knife outwards and not letting the body be injured anymore or be represented as sacrificial as such.
So this is another work by Ursula. It's called C'est moi, That's Me. I guess it's maybe a self-portrait of Ursula.
Yeah.
And she has decorated the self-portrait with feathers and fur. There's a cat's tail.
If we think about Nazism, you know, these fairy tales, folk tales were important. The myth making was very important in Nazism as well. And after the Second World War, a lot of artists were concerned about, well, how can we reclaim these narratives? I think Ursula here is taking on that role of all kinds of furs and takes these different feathers and furs as an empowerment.
Word wrapped in poisonous letters becomes transparent, and it's from 1970.
It represents a swastika in a deconstructed form, so she's twisting that shape, which also reminds of barbed wire. In terms of trauma, she's asking the question about containability and incontainability, about visibility and invisibility.
This is Pippi Lottie-Wrist.
It's called Open My Glade. It has appeared in different versions. So it appeared in Times Square as a huge installation.
The artist's face is really smooshed up against a pane of glass.
Trying to break through the glass ceiling. Yeah.
The idea of escaping from domesticity and from the social pressures on women, it just really comes across in the way that she's kind of desperately trying to escape from here.
Yeah. There are parts of this video where you find it quite funny, which however turn very quickly into something much more sinister.
Dark humour is really important, especially women's humour. It's a weapon.
So there are a number of things what I hope what audiences will take away from this exhibition. They see how women artists were particularly strong politically to engage with historical issues and situations, and particularly the Second World War.
And the resonances between the conditions that many of these women were working in the mid and late 20th century and where we are today are really striking. And I hope that people will take some of that away, that there are ways of looking at the world where women find strength and humour
Yeah.
and are indefatigable in the face of what's happening politically across a lot of the world at the moment.
Yeah. We are living in traumatic times.